And we are live on Oz Property Investors. We bring the big names. We have the big fun, and we're just having so much fun in the pre-chat. We forgot we're about to go live. So, how are you going, Jackie? What's happening?
I am really well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I feel this is a welcome distraction to live because it's been a busy and just interesting couple of days. So, yeah, life is good, and yeah, just RBA increase like a clock, and on the second Tuesday or the first Tuesday of each month. Increase the rates again. So, it's just if they don't do it now, I'm going to be disappointed. No, I won't be disappointed. Anyway, how you going, Joe? How you going?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I am super pumped for tonight. It's crazy that the interest rates rise. I posted this today about how scared the market kind of feels, but like there's so many opportunities out there now. A couple of hours ago, I negotiated on a contract and got $22,000 off on a pest and building report, which is absolutely absurd. After already buying it really, really well, the agent just went back to the vendor and was like, "Look, we're scared at the moment, so you should be scared as well, and you shouldn't, blah blah blah." And we got $22,000 off.
Can you tell us which state this is in?
It's in Adelaide. What was that? What was that, Jackie?
Was that the starting offer? You started at 22 and they just accepted it straight away?
Yeah, they just accepted the flat. I was like, I told my client, we'll go to 15. This is our walk away price because there are some things that need to be fixed. We start at 22 and we work our way down. We start at 22. The agent calls me back and he says, "Hey, Joe, the vendors have accepted the price at was it 533. But if your guys can go up to like 540, that would be really good." I'm like, no, we can't. Okay, that's fine. Then 533 is fine.
Man, you got to
not a very good agent.
What a weak negotiating point. Like, just when they say, we've got 4 other people offering an extra 3,000. Like, why?
Yeah. Screw you. I'm going to the market. Yeah. What about you, Jeff? How are you, mate? You look very fresh. You got a new trim.
Yeah, I haven't done. Yeah, feeling good, man. It's warming up here in Sydney and South Coast. Yeah, everything's good, man. I'm excited for this session because there is talk of rising interest rates and how to combat that because and how to do it in a way that's not. There's a perception out there that increasing your rent makes you an evil slumlord and all this kind of thing, which I don't think is somewhat unfair. But no, excited for this session. So let's.
That's the interesting thing as well. Like just to kind of jump into the session right away, almost. But it's like interest rates are rising, and there's this new Queensland land tax. This is scaring investors. And it is going to get I know that they want to raise land tax to, bring some revenue into the state, but it's going to be passed down to the people. It's going to be passed down to the renters out there. So I find that interesting as well. But we have quote of the week. Jackie Skein, what is your quote of the week?
My quote, I just stuck with the classic Einstein. I was scrolling through. I'm like, just got to go with the classic. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. Very profound.
And so is that anybody who hasn't made a mistake hasn't tried anything new?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's profound because you often hear about all the successes and they don't talk about the mistakes they made to get to that success. So I think that's and we get a little afraid to take a chance and do all that sort of stuff. So I love that quote. I love me some Einstein as well. It's he's a wise guy. Just and
wise man. What about you, Jeff? What's your quote of the week, mate?
Well, before we do, any questions, comments? We love that. We love the engagement. So if you've got questions about rentals and about tenancies, but my quote of the week is also by Einstein. So I promise we didn't compare notes. Maybe we did. In the midst of everyday difficulty lies opportunity. So to your point, Joe, I think it's clear that yes, there is a shift in the market. There's some headwinds for property, and herein lies the opportunity to be able to say, okay, cool. Can I secure a bargain in or a cheaper sort of thing? Or can I increase my rents to make to be able to reduce the impact of that RBA cash rate increase? So I wanted to put that out there.
How do I optimize my portfolio? Right, like that's That's a big point. How can you? Because the one thing is money's in the management for sure. I actually am in the middle of negotiating my lease, not lease, my mortgage rate. I realize I'm paying 4.7%
What are
on
you doing,
principal
Joe?
and interest.
4.7. Hey, when was the last time you negotiated that?
I didn't. I've been too busy just
Oh,
not talking to the banks. Then they're like, yeah, rates are going up. And I'm like, oh, well, it makes sense. And then I was going through the statements. I'm like, 4.7. So I'm going to send through a script once I get the discount, but it's going to go from 4.7 to 3.44.
Wow.
Which I haven't done the numbers of what that actually is, but it's a lot. So it's just about jumping on the phone, spending a bit of time on it, but it can be done. What is my quote?
Yeah.
There is nothing certain but the uncertain. So yeah, I think that bodes well for this time at the moment. Everything is looking very uncertain for people. People are getting a little bit worried and things, and then there's people out there that are making massive opportunities. When COVID struck, we bought $10,000 worth of Qantas shares, and everyone was like, "That's the dumbest move I've ever seen." And then they went up 40%. I guess taking the opportunity when the times are a little bit uncertain, when there's less buyers in the market. And anyway, let's talk about rentals and how to raise and optimize.
Yes.
Should we talk about Jackie first, and then before we do
we got
that,
an ad
Joe,
first, Jeff.
I was going to say,
Go to the ad.
Joe's so excited. You're not even thinking that. Who do we have first?
Who do we have? You tell me, Jeff, and I'll click the button.
I don't know.
Steve, it is.
Commercial property offers the highest cash flow in Australian property investing, offering exceptionally higher yields than residential. Now, we're talking 8 to 10% net yields. That's cash after all expenses, not this 2 to 6% gross that we see in the residential space. So for those that are starting out on their commercial investing journey, it can be exciting, but it's also a step not to be taken lightly. The expertise of a commercial buyer's agent can pay dividends to help you secure that high cash flow and high growth potential properties. And this is why we recommend Steve Polisi of Polisi Property. With over 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He has seen it all and knows the best locations right for growth. In a previous life, Steve was a chartered mechanical and structural engineer, so he draws on his mathematical and analytical skills that he's developed to break down what works best in commercial property. As with engineering, same goes with commercial property. It's based primarily on the numbers. So if you're curious about diversifying into commercial property, you have access to $100,000 in cash or in equity, book a call with Steve today and find that perfect asset for you.
There you go. Good commercial. Is Joe with us? What's going on? But that's interesting. He is there. I played it right to the end. The interesting, you were talking about interest rates. Somebody said that their rate was 5.1. So you will have to, maybe we need to make a newsletter about that one. So yeah. Anyway, the person of the hour, Jackie, and people are excited for this session. They're rolling in, and there were so many people registered. But for those people who've been living under a rock and not in this group, Jackie is the MD of My Logan Realty, and you picked your first property up in 2015, and that was around the same time I bought mine actually, my first, and you fell in love with Logan, and I think the thing that really hammers home is you are a down to earth property manager, agent, and the honesty and transparency, but also just the value you bring to people, and I'd say you are an industry leader, and that you value the long-term relationships. So I think it's not just about, though, the big kind of the large property portfolio investors. You really also care about the mums and dads and the kind of the little people that are getting, that's a funny way of putting it, their first property or their second property. So just actually nurturing those relationships. So to me, that's sums you up, and just your authenticity as well. So
thank you, Jeff. That's very nice.
Yeah. It's too long, but excited to have you on and talk about how to, because there was some fantastic examples that you created for us. You created a PowerPoint to show all those examples. So should we dive in, Joe, and look at that, or do you have any questions? Actually, before we do that, sorry, we need to ask. We usually ask you about your first property investment or your latest, but this time we're mixing it up. What is the most exciting sort of rental increase you've had in the last 12 months, or just rental story?
So this one was actually in Oxenford, so not in Logan, because the Gold Coast is one that there's just so much competition down there, even still, that the increases have just gone nuts. So this was maybe it was in February. So it wasn't even like as in the last 6 months. This was early, because generally what you see is once the market booms, it's like 6 to 8 months, then the rents start really going. And what were they paying? They were paying $420, and we increased it to $650. And the tenants signed on straight away though, because at the time, Oxenford, so that's kind of near all the theme parks and everything, for comparable 4-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, they were going for $680, $690, $700. So they were even getting a discount, even though it was such a big increase. So that was probably the biggest. And it's a tricky one, because not everyone, like I could imagine myself, someone saying, an extra $230 a week out of your weekly budget, like that's a lot of money. So not everyone can afford an increase like that. But that was the biggest.
Wow. Did they see it coming? Like, was it expected or?
More so, that one was probably a little bit unexpected, as in they were probably expecting an increase, but maybe not all the way to market value. But essentially, as long as there's comparable supporting it, you can do that. So we'll go through that in the slide a bit more. But more so now, like we've got tenants when the lease renewal is coming up where they're actually anticipating an increase. They're just unsure of how much. So the conversation is, hey, the leases, and people contacting us, like we had people contacting us in July for October ones, because they're like, we know what's happening in the market. We generally look at it like 70 to 85 days out. We've got tenants coming to us now saying, hey, we're anticipating an increase. We just want to know how much. So that's kind of where it's at.
Oh, wow. People are already reaching out to you. We know it's going to happen. Can you just give us some insight so we have a bit of an understanding of where it's going to go? And what do you say in those conversations? Because, actually, there's probably a better question is what happens to the market, in 3 months? Can it shift fundamentally? Like, can it be like, oh, actually, I can't say because it may have crashed and can be completely different? Or how does it kind of work for rentals?
Yeah, so it's depends on the property and depends on the tenancy. Like rent increases are also super specific to the investor and the tenant and the property and everything. So some of them will reach out early, but you do run the risk of, but depends. It's like if you're getting, say, $160 a week rent increase or whatever it works out to be, are you really going to, the benefit of waiting another 2 months is you might get more? Like 160 is probably still pretty brutal. So that's kind of the other side as well.
What was the reason why it was why it was so low in the first place? Was it the tenant, the landlord wanted to keep it?
Yeah, well, I got the property because the client had just bought it, so that tenant was already in place, which is pretty common as well, where they're already in place. The investor buys it, and then we negotiate it.
Oh, there you go. Interesting.
So how do you help investors, right? So that says to me that person already had a property manager in place. And did you work with that investor to help find that property, or did you help them? Like, how did you get involved at all? Because usually they buy it off a property manager. There's already a property manager in there. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on the property. Some of them, I've got a lot of clients who are interstate and we do like complimentary inspections. So we'll go through and inspect it. Obviously, we're not buyer's agents, so we don't really negotiate. We'll kind of give them feedback on things that they can do and the potential rents and what they can do to increase them. And then other ones, they kind of have already bought it and they come to me and say, hey, I bought this property. Can you manage it?
Yeah. So why was that property... It's coming for the show. Why was that? There's just a dog walking past. But why was that property rent so low? Like, why was it set at that amount? Like, do you think?
Well, the biggest increases have been in the last 12 months. And then prior to that, these tenants, I think they'd been in there 3 or 4 years. So it can incrementally get further and further away from market value if they're only, because notoriously, like in the last 10 years, we would increase rents for renewals. Like, you know, if you got like a $40, $35 a week, that's big. Notoriously, it was like 5, 10, 15, 20. And if the owner just says, keep them the same, you're getting further and further away from the market value. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll unpack reasons why people may decide to not increase the rent, or I think that'd be an interesting question, because that was something that I hadn't. I mean, I've not increased rents, but should we get into the PowerPoint, Joe, and start, because that's a great kind of win. That investor know that was likely what was going to happen with their rent for their property.
Well, they anticipated it, because like with that one, I'd done a rental CMA and told them that that's where it was at. So they were anticipating that it would come up. I think we pushed it a little bit further than that, but they were anticipating, you know, at least 150. So yeah.
Because you basically, depending on what they purchased at, you could, let's just say they bought it at, I don't know, 600K or 650, whatever it was, 700. You imagine what it was at about, you said 420. So the yield on that would have gone from, I don't know the numbers because off the top of my head, but would have gone from about approximately a 3.5% yield, maybe 3.2, to about roughly a 5% yield. So it's just
and
crazy.
I think there's value in that as well for investors, because you know, if you're selling a property with a tenant in place and it's really under market value, then you know, you kind of get rid of all the owner occupiers because they don't want to hang around for 7 months or whatever it is, and then you got automatic value add potential by just doing a lease renewal. And sometimes I've had one that I actually sold, and we negotiated the lease renewal. It was due in maybe November, and we negotiated the lease renewal in July, because a part of him wanting to buy it was that it was like $100 under market value. And then the tenant signed that as well, because they want to stay.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm actually seeing, this is actually a little like tip for investors that are looking to buy properties, is don't get too shy if you see a property with a lease on it. You know, that's actually something to look out for. So I recently purchased a property that had a 12-month lease at $300 a week, and the market rent was $450 for the property. So that is an additional $150 a week rent. But like that automatically, the people that drive up the value and costs of property are owner occupiers. And if owner occupiers see that place and they love it, it's beautiful, it's the best thing ever, that's great, but they can't buy it because they can't move into it for a year. Or because they don't want to buy it with a tenant in place and try and kick them out, but the tenant wanted to stay and they're not leaving and they have their thing there. But that is $150 times by 52. So you're losing $7,800, but you get massive discounts. The emotional premium is down and you can get an awesome deal. Like crazy, absolutely crazy. So look out for those types of things, and then get someone like Jackie in and boom, rent's going up $150.
All right.
Okay. Well, I'm excited about how much can you increase your rents in 2022. So let's dive into this little thing. Can you see this one, Jackie?
I can see that.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So we haven't seen this, so hopefully it's
I've
PG.
seen it, Joe. I mean, I don't
You
know.
looked at it, Jeff. You have not. Don't you lie. You
I looked at it. Yeah. I know it back to front.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so what are we covering off here? What are we talking about? How we can increase our rents?
Yes, so this is very specific to Queensland, because obviously I'm the expert in Queensland. So I'm not going to talk about Victoria and Adelaide. I don't know the legislation. So that every state is different with their legislation. So, you know, they might have different rules on how much you can increase, or you can only increase by the CPI or whatever it is. So this is Queensland. So I just wanted to firstly just go through what the legislation is very quickly surrounding excessive rent increases. So a tenant can dispute the increase if they feel it is excessive by discussing the issue with their property manager / owner. If the tenant feels the increase is excessive, they can apply for a dispute resolution once the agreement is signed, which is really interesting because they have to
Yeah.
sign it and agree to it and then dispute it. So to be honest, I've never had it. I've never, touch wood, never had anyone dispute an increase. So there's probably people out there who do, but generally you kind of negotiate, and then by signing the agreement, you agree. So that's interesting. And essentially, if that does happen, the tenants can take it to QCAT, which is the court system up here, and they'll just establish the range between the market value and the similar properties that are on the market. That's why whenever you do a rent increase, you have to have as much evidence as you can supporting that that's the market value. The range between rents and the current rent, the state of repair of the property. So that's really important. We always make sure that, you know, all the maintenance is up to date before you propose a lease renewal, because that's going to, like, obviously you need to maintain the property. Term of the tenancy and period since the last rent increase. So they're kind of the areas that we need to be mindful of. But essentially the way I see it is, as long as we are providing evidence that that is the market value, and there's realestate.com listings and rental CMAs, then you are fine to increase it, because you could justify it if it went to QCAT.
Okay.
Yeah, so a bit to unpack there.
A bit to unpack there. What happened? What?
I was keen to ask on that, with that period since last, or the term of the tenancy. I mean, you know, at the moment, are you, or I don't know if this changes based on market conditions, but are you looking to sign tenants up to a 6-month, a 12-month, or what are you typically kind of doing with a lot of your properties at the moment?
Yeah, I think a lot of my clients are in it for the long haul, so they prefer 12-month tenancies. The only reason I'd recommend a 6 is if we weren't doing that big of an increase for a particular reason. Like, for example, say there's a granny flat being built. And those kind of things. So, yeah, that's kind of very rarely. Most clients want a 12-month. And the other one is, like, we won't have leases ending not in peak time. So we have a lot of our leases. So sometimes we'll do like an 8-month lease or whatever, just to get it in that peak time so that we're listing at the right time of the year as well.
So what are some of the times that we would want to avoid listing a rental on the 12-month renewal? Yeah,
Christmas, like, yeah, I literally don't even have any leases expiring after like the 7th of November. Like, it just, there is like a mild rush for a little bit where people are like getting desperate at the end of November, and then it just goes quiet and people just get worried, because I think the investors are, you know, offices closed down and things. So yeah, that's just not a great time. And that's probably it, December and the Christmas period.
So one thing that stood out to me is excessive rent increases once the new agreement has signed. Probably because it's in bold, it stood out to me. But does that mean, do you think this is a bit of a way out for investors? Like, they put this in here to kind of help investors a little bit? Like, why once the agreement's signed? Once the agreement's signed, it's kind of legally binding.
Yeah, exactly. I have no idea. But honestly, it doesn't really happen. We negotiate, like, I don't, even being amongst the property management community a lot, like, I don't hear this happening a lot. So generally, because you negotiate back and forth and you reach an agreement you're both satisfied with, or you might terminate the tenancy.
So the question I've got is you've been doing property management for what, 15 years or something wild?
Years.
Like,
no, Joe.
10 years?
Jeez. Come on,
God.
Joe.
Hey.
Yeah, I started when I was 12.
Good. You're an early starter. And you've seen market rental cycles going on and you know, throughout that period of time. But what has caused this current rental crisis that we're in? Because you can only really speak for Logan to a degree and the Gold Coast, but I'm seeing this all over Australia. Like, what's caused all of this?
I think it's just a real combination of everything. So you have like a lot of owner occupiers bought or upgraded. There's social housing as well. I don't know if I saw it on your page or where it was, but it was 6% of social housing, and now it's down to 3% of the total population social housing. So they have gotten rid of a lot. So those people are obviously going to come into the market. Up here, like combination of like floods, and then we've had all this migration, so many like Victorians and Sydney siders coming up. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, the just population up here.
So Sydney siders are coming up, which is then they're buying investment properties, but then living in them as owner occupiers, booting out the renters, and then their renters need to find a place to live.
Yeah, some are like that. Yeah, so I think it's a combination. It's come down to the population. Just a big increase in population, which we've been talking about for years. Like we've been waiting.
Yeah, exactly. But are you seeing this? Have you seen anything like this happen before where we're doing these massive increases like this?
Never. And that's what I was talking to an investor today, because I was making suggestions on what we should increase the rent to. And he's like, kind of pushing back on it and saying, that's probably a bit high. We've never seen it. And like you go back to 2015, 2016, we're offering 2 weeks rent free, all kinds of incentives, because at that time we had such an oversupply. And then now, never in 10 years have I seen anything like that. Like the most you'd increase it's like $35, $40 maximum. That was the best. Never like this.
It's going absolutely mental. We got a property, and we were expecting to list it for 550. It's now at 600, which I guess isn't a crazy, like the numbers that you're talking here. That's nothing compared.
It's only 10%, Joe. I mean, geez, steady on, man. That's huge. 10%.
Grow up, Joe. Exactly.
$2,600 a year.
Well, this is it. Like I hear a lot of investors saying, "Oh no, interest rates are rising. It's going to affect my bottom line." Yeah, it might affect the the expenses, but your bottom line probably won't be affected, because we're getting a massive rental increases across all of our properties. Like we're getting a 30%. If you owned a property for 2 years, your rents would have gone up 30 to 40%. Or 30%, let's just say.
Some properties, let's say not all properties.
Yes, absolutely not all. So actually, there's a question, Jackie. What properties aren't getting a good rent? Like, is it blanket rule everything's renting, or like what is sitting on the market a little longer and not so great?
Probably the more I don't know, it's hard to say. I want to say the more executive properties, but we've had a couple at like $950 a week, and we rented one of them off market just by another application that came through. So I would say probably the higher end, over 700. Definitely once you crack the 1,000, they will sit longer, because obviously not everyone can afford that amount of rent. So I've got a lot of friends in the industries, and they've had a lot more. You got to pull out all the stops, and you got to call everyone and take them through privately, and work a lot harder for it. Where even I'm not sure. I don't do a lot of townhouse stock, but maybe townhouses a little bit, and anything that's like a house rents really fast, and also like 2-bedroom granny flats, they're renting really fast as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, like not everyone, people just a little bit confused about granny flats. Like, do they rent as well? And how can you optimize your granny flat so it rents a little bit better too?
Okay. They rent well. So we're getting the current market value for a 2-bedroom brand new granny flat in Logan at the moment is $370 to $380 a week. That's what we're getting. There's some agents that list them for $320 and $330 or something, but I think there's enough supply out there. Like we have one for $380 and we've got 7 applications. So I don't think there's any reason to go low on it. But just making sure that separation's good, but they kind of go through that all at the planning stage where the separation's nice and just making it more homey for people. So, but they're pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was looking at a granny flat today. I was looking at a property with a granny flat today, actually, and the granny flat was across the back block, and then the side gate was like over here. So you had to do like a zigzag to get to your granny flat. And as soon as you put you can't really put up a fence to make that layout work, and it just looks like crap. So if you are, purchasing a granny flat, look for those type of things as well. Anything else to look for granny flats?
Yeah, just most of them are designed in the way that they're appealing. They're all pretty similar. Like all the builders are all different, and some of them are a nightmare, and some of them are really good. But yeah, they tend to all have like a deck, an aircon, ceiling fans, robes. So they really have designed them so that they tick all the boxes, and then you can add like carports and things on top. And just I find the ones with no yard. So if you did one on like a 600 square meter block, they're just not as appealing because it feels a little bit more cramped, where when you're doing them on like 700 to 800, it's like, oh, this is actually a full house and, you've got your own space.
Yeah. Okay. And if you have a 600 square meter block, are you best to take land from the front house or the granny flat? Like, what do you think?
It has to be built in Logan. It has to be built next to it or behind it.
Yeah.
So you can't take land.
But when you put the fence up, you want to give them the granny flat a little bit more or the house a little bit more? I guess the house because they've got more.
Yeah, it depends. It's so specific to each one. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we've got some fine examples of rental increases and rental opportunities. So let's cover off those. What are we looking at here?
So this is Northern Gold Coast, so Ormo, which notoriously was like high development area. Like I've been working in Ormo for 10 years, and we haven't seen huge rent increases in that time. Like probably 10 years ago, we started at say 380, and it was about 450, 460, depending on the configuration. So this one was a lease renewal, and current rent was 450, which was probably market value, maybe just a smidge under. And we increased it to 640. And we were able to do that. Like, it doesn't take long. If you were to go to realestate.com now and see what a 4-bed, 2-bath, 2 garage is renting for, they're all renting around 650. So that was a discount of $10 a week if they were to move, and they signed straight away.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's an incredible. Like, how much would it cost to buy that property?
I don't know.
I reckon 800. I reckon about 800. Let's have a quick look.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 695.
695. There you go.
That's a 4.7% yield, but it was on a 400. It was on a 3.3% yield. And now you've got it to 4.7. That's massive.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between a positively geared and a negatively geared property.
Legitimately, it is. That is the difference. And like, that's only got one living area, so it's nothing. It was pretty stock standard custodian style build.
Okay. Let's have a look here.
So this one was in Logan. So something that investors need to know as well, like with negotiating, it doesn't always just have to be about the money. I often will utilize improvements that are going to add to capital growth and just the presentation of the property. So this one, the client bought it with the tenants in place. Awesome tenants. They're really lovely. And they were really keen to sign on again. And the market value was 550. And we did want to keep them on because we foresee that they will be super long-term tenants. So that's really good security for the investor. So we ended up negotiating to $115 increase. We put aircon in the living area because they didn't have any aircon in the property. And then we replaced the carpets in 3 bedrooms, which was like $960. And so we'll do that in some cases if that means a better increase. Because I think the tenant counter offered us at maybe $515 or something along the lines of that. And then we kind of added those incentives to get him the best. And what's good is the client can now, with that value, finance, and you've just increased it so naturally. So that was a good one.
It's almost criminal that you don't have air conditioning in Queensland. Like, what was to go with that? Like, isn't that a law or something? You have to have air conditioning in your property.
Ceiling fans.
Yeah, sorry, just circulate the hot air.
The old window rattler.
I wish it was hot. It's bloody freezing up here at the moment. It's a nightmare.
Looks like they smashed 2 houses together. One came running at this end and one came running at this end.
So this
it's a beautiful house.
It's actually really nice. It's not the best angle because I kind of want to keep these a little bit private.
Yeah.
But yeah, this house really beautiful inside, immaculately presented. And this one we kind of had to. There was a lot of back and forth to get this increase. But to be fair, if we were to put this property on the market, I'd be really confident that we'd start advertising at probably 560, 550 and would get it. So even at 540, that's a discount for what we could get on the market. And there's just a really lack of, I know for Logan, most of Logan, there's just a lack of supply for 4-bedroom houses particularly. So yeah, the tenant ended up coming back and agreeing to it, but that took a couple of weeks of them doing their own research. We provided them maybe 8 realestate.com links and then a full rental CMA so that we could justify that, so that we are just informing them of what it would get on the market.
Yeah.
So have you seen a change? Because there was a number of floods in Logan. How did that affect the rental market and things like that? Do you see that there's more of a flight to non-flood affected properties, or how did it affect the market?
I think at that time, that January, February, because I was finding that the market was maybe slightly cooling, and then it added another peak to demand because obviously there was I can't remember how many houses. I heard the other day there was still 2,000 that are still unable to be occupied. So the 2,000, yeah. So that just added to the pressure at the time. And yeah, flood affected properties. I'm not really sure on, I don't really have a lot. A lot of the properties in Logan are built around the flood map. So local areas will, their road might flood, but very rarely do the properties actually flood. So yeah, don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Well, if you are looking in Logan, the top spot to go is the Logan Hub here. And it gives you a full rundown and a deep dive into Logan, and you type the address in, you'll find the site, you type in interactive mapping, and it will take you there. Now, one thing
I thought you said the Logan Pub. I was like, oh, geez.
Hub, H-U-H, let me zoom in. Oh, I can't zoom in. loganhub.com.au. But also one thing that to be aware of is speak with council as well, because the flood zone mapping is going to get changed now, isn't it, Jackie?
Yeah. I had a client who was going to buy a property in Meadowbrook and would actually, this was 6 months ago or something, and would negotiated, and he was so excited and he really wanted it. And then, we were advised by council that the maps it was backed onto a golf course. So the golf course actually flooded. And then we were advised that they will be changing. I don't know if they've changed yet. You'd think they would have, because that was actually a while ago. But they were going to increase that. And that would mean that the backyard was going to be, even though the backyard never flooded, that would be deemed to be flood affected. So,
So you got to future-proof some of these things. If some properties are on the border of a flood zone, so it might now be in a flood zone. So always double check with council. Jump on the phone. If you're spending $600,000, $700,000, make a phone call. You'll be all right.
Well, as somebody, I would be very cautious of buying on the border of a flood zone, because regardless of whether it's 2, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, there's at some stage that is going to get updated and may get flooded. So I would, everybody's got to make their own decisions on the risks they're willing to take. But
but understand the contours of the landscape as well. If there's a flood zone running along here and it's on top, your house is on a big hill, then it's then that's okay. But you definitely don't want to be buying too close to one.
You don't want your house to go under, because that's but it's funny. It's you look at all the properties along the Hawkesbury and it's millions and millions of dollars, and then they've been flood affected 3 times in the last, couple of years. So, interesting. I think that the council could definitely, just my 2 cents, mitigate the floods a lot more if they were to, I'm sick of them saying, oh, we spent billions of dollars in this flood damage. It's why don't we be proactive and do some dredging and drainage so that maybe all these houses don't go under every few years.
Jackie for Councillor Jackie. That's a good
I wouldn't be able to do it because it moves too slow. I'm no, I want that. Let's start dredging tomorrow. And they'll be oh, we've got to have a meeting and
funding. Of course.
What about the ficus and the fern tree and the little things that live there? Okay, what's this one?
like
What have
this
we
one.
got here? More increases. How dare you, Jackie?
I know. So this one, just another Logan, just a 3-1 bread and butter. Increase that from 375 to 435. So that's pretty much where the market's at for like a 3-1, unless it's got a lot more owner occupier appeal, like renovated bathrooms and kitchens. Most 3-1s are going for anywhere between, depends on, actually, I won't generalize because it's really different from suburb to suburb. But yeah, most of them should comfortably be getting a $60 a week increase. If not, maybe up to 100, 110.
Nice. Okay. Well, the question I've got is what product, like what type of property is
getting the biggest?
Yeah, like is getting the best return, best bang for your buck, I guess.
4-2s, definitely 422, 522. Anything dual living. I love dual living ones because they're so niche. And also when you think about a dual living property, if you've got your son who's 25 and he's working, earning $900 a week, it's a lot easier to increase by more or advertise for more because you're splitting it. You're able to split it more. So it then makes it more affordable for everyone. So yeah.
Yeah. It's not such a big burden to carry. When you're splitting it between two people. Cool. Okay. When to take it to market?
Yeah, when to take it to the market, because like obviously these are massive increases, and if you've just got one single person on their own who's just on a fixed salary or don't have the potential to pay more, like at that time, then it's the decision of, and these are not easy decisions and easy conversations to have with these investors because some of them are very attached to their tenants and they've been great tenants. But I was just talking to a client 2 days ago and the current rent's $415 and the tenant can only afford to go to $440, and very comfortably on the market we could get $550. So they're missing out on
$110.
It's so much, and it's so hard because she's such an excellent tenant at the same time. So it's but then it's historically that property that's actually in Ipswich region, in one of those new estates that's not really performed for the last 7 years since she's held it. So this is the time where she can make it go from negative geared to positive geared, but she's got to make that hard decision of like ending a really excellent tenant. You could not fault her. So yeah, that's the hard.
Yeah, actually, because I guess there's the human side to all of this, and you must actually see a lot more than a lot of people. Like, how is it on the other side of things for tenants trying to find properties?
It can be really, really, really devastating to have those conversations with the tenants, especially because we build rapport with the tenants as well. So, it's a tricky one of, that client's going to miss out on at least $6,000 a year. And then how many years is that okay for? It's like, okay, we do it this year. What's it going to be next year? And then the year after. And but there's definitely devastating side to it. And, the worst thing is she can no longer afford in that area at all. So and that's probably the most common thing. Once they are outpriced or, they can't afford the increase, they have to move, and they have to move quite far because it's the same for the whole circle around it. They're all going up. So, then they have to change schools and all the kinds of things. So it's not nice at the same time. And you can't increase them for everyone, So, yeah.
You can't. What do you mean?
Not everyone can afford an increase.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
so cool. You can't, it's a tricky one. But yeah,
I think that kind of dovetails quite nicely into a question I wanted to ask around when are some times where landlords decide or you suggest landlords shouldn't increase their rent, or that they should kind of, or is that a personal choice?
Yeah, you're probably asking the wrong person, because I see my role as the property manager is like the trusted advisor. So it's my obligation to let them know how much they could be achieving. So that's mine. And we have an obligation, any property manager does, to tell them what the market value is. And that's the point of a rent review. So it's the client's decision at the end of the day. I'll always tell them what they could achieve on the market, because they deserve to know what they could potentially get, and then it'll be their discretion. So I've got some clients who have had long-term tenants, and I'm recommending, say, what was I recommending? 460, and then he's like, oh, well, let's just make it 440, because I think investors have an underlying fear as well that, oh no, we're going to increase it, and then they're going to report heaps of maintenance, and then so they're concerned that problems will come from that. And
that's not the case?
Oh, it can be, for sure. Definitely, if you're doing big increases, that's where, like, on the checklist, the first thing is to make sure it's in good repair, because the first thing they will do, if you're trying to negotiate with someone and the aircon's not working, it's like, why would we pay?
I'm not paying. Yeah, I'll go and pay somewhere else that has working air conditioning.
Yeah. So that is like pretty much the first thing. As soon as, if you increase the rent and it's not in if you're trying to increase the rent and the property's not in good repair or something's broken, the number one thing will be like, oh, well, the fence has been falling down for 2 years, so can they at least fix the fence? So that's the first thing.
We lost the dog 6 times this month.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's jump into the investor rent increase checklist. I'm excited to check that out and see what this is. So,
hey, you missed a part of the slide. You missed a part of the slide.
Oh, Joe, what are you doing?
Oh, God. Okay.
He's just so excited. He's like it.
We'll hold off on the rental increase checklist because we have 2 very nice slides coming. What have we got here? What's this?
Wow. There you go.
Oh, Jesus.
This is what I was kind of talking about with when to take it to...
230.
Yeah, 230. When to take it to market. So there are times when... Because you don't also want to put the tenant in financial hardship or in the position where they're not going to pay, because they might have notoriously been an excellent tenant, and you increase it by, say, $150 a week, and then they start to fall behind. So there are some cases where... like unemotionally, it's time to take it to market. So, for example, this one, tenants had been in there for 7 years, and we had the conversation on how much they could afford, and the most they could afford was $700. And for this owner, it's so much money per year that they'd miss out on.
It was $12,000 they would miss out on. $12,000. That is crazy.
So in Logan, especially, it's probably a good time to, like, we did the carpets and did some painting as well. So it's a good time, if you've got the funds as well, to do like the cosmetic renos, get it advertised, and then you can bump that up even more.
That's absolutely nuts. Okay. So when you say take it to market, you mean take it to the rental. Yeah. I mean, it's in the name, but just wanted to confirm.
This one, this was a single mum, so she couldn't afford anything more. So if we do take it to market, we are super hands-on, where we will help find the tenant. We'll either put them in something of our own, or we will really actively help them find something. So this owner was so lovely about it, and like we even gave her a Visa gift card because we just worked in with her, and we were able to extend it a little bit and just really accommodate her. But we spent, I think, $5,000 in just a cosmetic reno, and then that was $150 a week. So she couldn't have afforded that. So it was the time to take it to the market.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And $150 is not nothing. Okay, let's do it. This is now our investor rental checklist. What is this? Before we dive into
the checklist.
Are we excited to see the checklist? What exactly is this going to do for us? This investor rent. You need a better name for it. Investor rent increase checklist.
I'm going to do a better checklist. Yeah, I'm going to do a better checklist, which I think we'll do in the newsletter or something. These are just some key points to just go through that to make sure that you're getting the maximum rent. And almost at the same time to take it in your own hands. If a property manager is coming to you in anywhere in South East Queensland saying, oh, just a $10, $15 a week increase, like these first couple of steps are really easy, and just request them just to make sure that if you do want to get more, that you actually, because it's easy for a property manager, if you don't work for yourself and own the rent roll, to say, hey, let's just increase it by, $10, because it's an easy paperwork.
There's
side.
no emotion to it. The client on the other end is happy. You don't have to deal with an upset tenant, and the person who owns the property, they don't know the difference anyway. Oh, $20 a week, that's great. No one gets upset. It's a win-win-win, except the only person that loses is the investor. But it's funny. I work with property managers throughout all of Australia in every single state, and there is not one property manager, and this is not a go at other property managers in franchises, but I only work with property managers that are somewhat like a little bit smaller and are their own brand and their own business, because every time Jackie raises the rent $100, $250 or $130, that affects her business's bottom line, and she really cares about that. Like if you're working for insert franchise, getting paid $60,000 an hour, $60,000 a year, and you raise the rent by $20, it doesn't really affect you. You don't care. So what I find is the business owners, like My Logan Realty, that's not a franchise, that's your business, and you're more likely to, jump the rents up, and also see what incentives. Jackie, you've got a team behind you, and I imagine you've got incentives for people to, hey, if we increase rents, you get a slice of the pie as well, and that'll help, optimize and get more revenue for the business.
I will do that when we get bigger. Currently, I'm like the lease renewals, it's one of the highest value tasks at the same time. So I'm very hands-on with that. Yeah.
I think it's important to build something that do activities that don't scale initially, and then So I think that's important, and it shows how much you care about property management and the investors, but also the tenants. I think that's an important point to hammer home. So that's people excited to look at this checklist. Sorry, go.
I feel like you've talked up the checklist too much.
No, I haven't talked it up. I only talk up what's worth talking up. I get excited.
Okay, well, let's jump to our sponsor, and then we'll go through this beautiful checklist.
This live session is sponsored by Scott Agate from Hello House. Scott has created the world's first property negotiation as a service business. So what does that mean? Well, let's think about it. When was the last time you negotiated on anything over $100, let alone a property that is going to be one of the biggest investments of your life? The vendor, they have a trained negotiator on their side in the form of a real estate agent. That's kind of like you stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson after never training a day of boxing in your life. These guys are trained professionals, and that's what they do day in and day out. And this is what Hello House does every single day as well. They negotiate on property to get the best buy price from the real estate agents. Scott Agate, he's the expert negotiator. He has been in this industry since 1995. He owned and operated 3 Bell franchises. Scott was the guy that was teaching these real estate agents all these agent games. He knows all of their tricks. Having him on your side is going to give you a massive unfair advantage and literally save you tens of thousands of dollars. Unlike other ways of purchasing property, Scott's incentives are aligned with you, the buyer, meaning the more money he saves you, the more money he makes, which is what you want. You need to have those incentives aligned. Scott has kindly offered our group a massive discount on the retainer fee for his service. So if you're looking to buy your next home or investment property, click the link below to get in touch.
Oh, it's still me. I'm very big. Hey, guys. Jeff, help me. All the people are looking at me. Oh, good. Thank God.
I'm muted. that was funny.
Fantastic.
How good, great delivery. So the checklist with the, I was going to say Moses with it. I couldn't think of anything creative to say, but it is. I think you've undersold it, but it really, for me, as Joe says, the money is in the management. So I think if you can nail these points that we're going to go through, I think you can absolutely exponentially sort of improve your investing. So I think this is an underrated topic. That let's bring it up, Joe. Without further ado, without teasing people
Without
much longer.
further ado, let's do
Confirm. Yeah. So talk us through this list, and you should
All right. So pretty much confirm that the property's in good repair. So like I said before, that's the quickest thing. Any rent increase, if the aircon's not working or the dishwasher's broken, they're going to say, well, why should we pay this? Because you're not doing your part. So obviously make sure that's another reason why we do this, like 90 to 70 days out. One, we have to give 60 days notice of a rent increase. And two, like you want to make sure the property is in good repair all the time. But yeah, just making sure all those things are up to date. So step 2 is get your property manager to do a rental CMA, which they do through like CoreLogic or RP Data, about 70 to 90 days before the tenancy ends because of the reasons I just mentioned then. And then also just have a look on realestate.com. That's going to give you, like, it takes literally 2 seconds. It's going to give you just the most accurate idea of just scrolling through. It's like, oh, I've got a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom. This one's renting for this, or this is advertised for this. And that will give you an idea, especially if they're recommending increasing anything under like $30 a week in Southeast Queensland. Just double check that, because you don't want to lock yourself in for a 12-month lease that far under market value. And I have had clients sign on recently who they've just signed on a new lease based on the recommendations, and I've inherited it and it's $90 a week under market value, and they just signed it 2 months ago. So just double check it. And then I like to do this as well, where I kind of rate the tenancy. You take everything into consideration: care factor, rent payments, are they reporting excessive maintenance, has the history been, and then just kind of come up with a figure that makes sense for rating all those things out of 10.
What's
and then
care factor?
Well, just how much they care for the property. Are they, keeping the gardens nice and, improving on the property, or are they kind of just parking on the grass and ruining your turf? So just how much they care is a big one. And then I think my kind of rule is if the tenancy's under a 6.5, if you're like, look, they did get behind a few times and they don't pay their water on time and they're always whinging about these maintenance items, like it's probably time to, especially in the current market, it's probably time to consider going to market with it, because, they're not that great. They're just above average or below average. So confirm if the tenants can afford suggested rent increase with offering the lease. So we kind of have the conversation simultaneously with the tenant, and we talk about, how much can you afford, and that kind of just to make sure that what their expectations are as well. Confirm on any improvements with the lease negotiations. So this is what I was talking about with the with like the aircon and carpets, especially if they've been long-term tenants. It's kind of almost one of those things, you find out what improvements they'd like, and then you can make suggestions. We always give them 2 options as well. We'll say, well, we'll give you the lease at $450, which is, say, a $90 a week increase, or we can do $470 and we'll replace those blinds that you don't like, or whatever it is. So the tenants to issue the lease renewal and give 2 months notice of the increase, and they have to provide the comparables to the tenant. So it's hard as an investor. It's not like you want to micromanage them, but that's what's going to protect you if they do ever dispute it at QCAT, that you need to provide the evidence to the tenant that, that's what the market is. And then the property manager will negotiate with the tenants, and then the lease is returned. And then if they don't return the lease in time, you can go to market if the property's not. And you would generally advertise 30 days out.
It's a very tight timeline. Like I like the proactivity that you have there in your process, because I think that's something, in having owned a few properties, you sort of like I did get some of that sort of stuff, but yeah, that was I think this is almost the gold standard in property management. So that's why I like this. I'd call it the investor renewal checklist. We'll call it the IRC. It's a little less. I don't know. I feel investor rent increase. It's a bit like we're going to increase your rent.
I know it won't always be happy days with $100 increases, but that's why it's really important to do it early because, just think about it. If you're doing a lease renewal, most agencies will do 60 to 90 days out. Like that's really, and you'll see when we go through the legislation in a minute why that's even more so important with the changes. Because if it's 60 days out and you don't give that increased time in advance, you're missing out on potentially like $800,000 in just that increase not being in place in time.
Do you see rents going down? Like, have you seen rents because this is rising incredibly high. Do you see, what do you see happening? Do you see it going boom and then dropping? Do you see this being the new normal? Like, what does it kind of look like for you?
I think a lot will come down to the supply. So what is you still look at those areas in Logan and Marsden and stuff. And there's only 4 or 5 houses for rent. So until that supply comes on, we will see them. I don't know if they'll continue to rise because even we're seeing some of the rents, especially for the dual living, higher than what you would pay in the city 5K rim because people still want to live in those areas. So we'll probably see. I think it's going to probably stay at this level and then it might. But there's a huge difference in what different agencies advertise for as well. Like a client contacted me today and asked me to appraise one of his properties and that he's got with another agency at the moment. And just looking, it was in Morayfield on the north side and there was comparable properties listed for $550 and then there was some other comparable properties listed at $400. So there's some areas where there's such a huge, discrepancy.
Disparity.
That's the word.
I was looking at SQM and I might bring the screen up. This is like what the rental market's been doing in postcode 4144, which is that Logan postcode?
What was that?
4144.
Yeah, that's Woodridge, Kingston, Logan Central.
Yeah, so look, it looks like the rents have been pretty.
It's been the same forever. We've never seen that's what I'm saying. You would increase it by $5, $10, $15.
I think I think what I'm getting from this part of this though, Joe, we need to get SQM to pay us, mate. I mean, the amount of bloody airtime you give SQM, it's
because if anyone knows Louis Christopher, tell him to reply to my messages.
It's all right, Joe. I'll send him a nice message. We'll get him on. Don't worry. We'll get him
send nice messages. Bring him on. I want to see his data and I want his great, helpful. You're amazing, Louis Christopher. You have a great platform and we love you. We want to hear from the data man or Nerida Conisby as well. We want her too. So if you are one of those people and if you know how to get in touch with them, please do. But I'm actually interested, Jackie, in the new change in legislation that is going on in Queensland about, what is it?
Can I ask a question about the checklist before we move on? Because we will get to the question.
You have a question?
Yeah. So which of these parts of the process, which one do you find is the most challenging and why is it the most challenging?
It's the negotiation with the tenant because, it's pretty rare that they'll pretty excitedly be like, yep, that's fine, we'll sign off. Seeing it more and more, but most tenants, they want to negotiate or they want to go back and forth or they will just ghost you and not respond to you for 3 weeks and you're literally hounding them and having to escalate it and issue a notice to leave or whatever you do. The negotiation is I'm probably negotiating maybe 5 leases on the go at the moment. And it's a slow burn. They tend to want to drag it out.
Yeah. And you can see why, property managers wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want 5 negotiation for leases on my desk. Absolutely not. I'll just take the $20 a rent increase.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that's why I do love just boutiques in general. And a lot of my friends run boutiques and they bat hard for it because it does benefit them as well. So even more so. So that's kind of the underlying thing. But obviously it's about the investor. So that's kind of
it's the incentives. I think having your incentives aligned is very, very important. If whatever you're doing, you want to make sure that, if you're using a professional, like someone who's buying a house and land package, for instance, don't do that, because there's an incentive for that person to sell you that property for $40,000. So they're getting paid a commission for that. And it's like in anything, always look to, I think there was a Warren Buffett quote about, if you want to know where the money's going, follow where the incentive is. Something like that. I'll find it.
Yeah.
But you guys are more incentivized to raise the rents when it's due and when it fits and when is best. And I guess you kind of covered this already. Like, is there a point where you don't want to go too high for your rents?
Yeah, definitely. There's a balance because you need to make sure it's still market value or very close to it at the same time. So it's not really about getting the most and screwing over tenants. It's just about staying in line with where the market's at and getting that result. So all my investors are really great. Occasionally I'll come to them and say, okay, let's do a $45 increase. And they're like, oh, well, why don't we just make it 55? Okay, let's try that. So yeah, occasionally it's only ever just a little bit, and just to make it like a nicer round number. They're like, oh, why don't we just go to here? It's like, well, let's try that. And sometimes it works.
Instead of being 392, why don't you make it 400? I mean, that's
exactly.
Yeah. There is one that I'm negotiating that is what are we going at? I think we started at 90, and then they've come back and what did they come back? They wanted to do a $40 a week increase, and then we've gone back, and there's a bit of back and forth because that was real. It was high at the same time. It was market value, but it was on the higher side.
Yeah. Okay.
Property into the day of a property manager. We got some great questions coming in as well. So keep those questions. So we will get to a couple of those. If you want to respect Jackie's time as well. The Queensland rental reforms. What you need to know though, and Brendan, I saw put a question about notice to vacate as one of those, which I think you're going to have a slightly different opinion on, Jackie. And we had a chat about this pre-chat. Do you have this in the slide deck? I think you do.
What are you talking about? Issuing a notice?
About issuing a notice to vacate with a lease renewal.
No, 100%. When we went to the REIQ training for this legislation change, I was shaking my head, and I would not do that because I want my tenants to feel secure that they're going to have a long-term tenancy. So we will not be issuing a notice to leave, because also we've got the best technology that literally flashes. It's like your lease is the lease is 88 days. So if you can't, maybe for the big, Ray White's managing 3,000 properties or whatever they've got, yes, you might do that to make sure that your investor's always protected. But we're having conversations with leases that are expiring in November at the moment. So essentially our process with issuing notice to leave will be, if it gets to probably the 70 to 65 days, because you have to give 60 days notice, or actually 2 months. If it gets, within a week of that and we've not got a signed lease, we'll issue notice to leave. And that's a great way to, we've kind of always followed that process where you'd issue a notice to leave if they've not returned the lease, because it's hey, if you're not going to get back to us on the lease, and if you're not going to sign it, here's a notice to leave. We need to be on a fixed term.
And tell us about the reason behind, because there is a reason. You're not. It's about the periodic, the rules around that. Or are you going to go into
that'll be in the slides, won't it? Yeah. So can you give us a bit of a run through of the overall, what is this actually? What are Queensland rental reforms like?
So they originally took a bill to the government or whatever it was, and the RIQ went back and got some things amended, and it's essentially to give tenants more rights. And some of them are just common sense. Other ones are definitely not in our favor as investors. So it's just kind of giving tenants a little bit more rights, but they're not that different at the same time. I'm still learning them because they don't come into form until the 1st of October. So yeah, we're not
And
really practicing with them yet.
This happened in Victoria as well. I think it was about a year or year and a half ago. And it was a little bit more intense. Like it's the rules over in Victoria are a little bit harder than the new reforms. But we'll start to see this. It's the same with the land tax. You'll see one state take it on. They will benefit from it greatly. The other states will say, hey, why don't we utilize this and do it as well? And they'll start rolling it on. This reform, you'll start to see it in South Australia. You'll start to see it in WA. You'll start to see it in New South Wales. It rolls across the states.
Yeah, some things are logical and that's fine. And other things, it's just going to detriment the stock levels and tenants at the end of the day, because less investors are going to be motivated to, jump on Queensland properties. And then, it's just adding to the lack of stock. So, I think at the end of the day, it's going to hurt the consumer and the tenant the most, even though, and they're such small things, I just think, I don't know, I'm very people based with it all. It's like all these legislations, like you only need that in place if things are escalating, if you treat people well and have a good relationship, things don't escalate.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's jump into it. Okay, well, this one is one you can definitely go for by the sounds of things. Like if there's domestic and family violence, there's some issues there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's good. And I think it's good that they could. So essentially what's happened is they changed the legislation. So they only have to give 7 days notice. And they need to provide evidence of that. But a problem that our industry has with it is the evidence can be, AVO, DVO, and also like a letter from a psychologist. And there's a few other grey areas in there. So I am wildly concerned that, in the lower demographic, they're going to maybe manipulate that at times, because essentially they can give 7 days notice and they bypass their usual financial obligations to the lease with terminating them. And also with the REIQ training, they were saying that claiming the bond, if it would be deemed to be unsafe for the tenant to return to the property to clean it or do their normal end of lease obligations, that potentially the full bond could be released. So there's a lot of
gray
areas. I'm concerned that people might manipulate it, but this actual legislation, the 1 week's notice, has been in place since September last year, and I've had maybe 2 that's vacated with 7 notice.
Maybe call me an optimist, or call me somebody who has a lot of faith. And I think you might get one in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 people take advantage of this. Which if that's the case, I'm happy to wear it for the 999 or the 9,999 others that are genuine. So, but yeah,
100%. And I think if you're feeling unsafe in your home, that's 100% 7 days. That's so reasonable, and then you can get somewhere safely. So yeah, that's definitely, I think, reasonable and fair.
So it's something to be aware of, though, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, pets. How good are pets? Actually, Jackie, before we jump into this one, your views on animals and pets. Like, how does this? Because the main assumption is like there's 100 dogs and they're going to run through the house and tear the place up. Do you see that as being a bit of a myth that pets and animals trash the place as always, or what are your thoughts on that?
I've seen pets that trash the house and tenants that trash the house.
Like kids
equally.
Kids are probably worse than pets, aren't they?
Kids do so much fair wear and tear, so much wear and tear. Like our house was fully renovated when we moved in, and now there's like scuffs on all the walls, and I feel like we need to like re-renovate it because having kids run around and throwing toys. So I like pets, not so much. I'm like a big dog person. Cats, I don't know. I think I've seen some cases in the past where cats will like tear up the edges of the carpets and undesexed male cats, and they'll like urinate everywhere because they're marking their territory. So we pretty much approve like 99% of pet requests though already.
Goldfish and a goldfish. Okay.
100%. We have 20.
Okay. What are we looking at here?
So the new legislation effectively eliminates the property owner's rights to have no pets policy, which is kind of not true at the same time because so the landlord will have the right to say no, but only on certain prescribed grounds. So essentially you can't decline a pet if the property is suitable for a pet. So for example, you can't really technically decline a dog if the yard is appropriate for a dog, but you could decline a goat if it's an apartment. So that's kind of the but then that's all this legislation's all grey and interpretable anyway. So it's like, oh, who's to say the goat's not a house trained? And it's like you can make an argument.
This is actually something in Victoria again. There's a similar thing in Victoria, and I didn't want to have a dog, and I couldn't tell the vendor. I couldn't say that to the tenants. So what we did is there was a portion of the fence that was taken down when we renovated it, and we just left that portion of the fence open. It's still secure, but there's no animal could live in it. So it's kind of, there are ways around.
Shouldn't be talking about this on live TV.
We'll bleep this bit out, I think, for the 37 people that are here, keep it quiet. But there are, you'll get creative. If there's some crazy new rule that comes out, there'll be a way to kind of get around it. If you don't.
Yeah. So, for sure. Yeah, and essentially, see, I never really agreed with this anyway. The first, the pet damage was excluded from wear and tear because they would say that, well, the tenant, the fair wear and tear of scratches on the floor is natural because an inside dog was approved. Well, I would have still treated that as damage. So that's not really that interesting. And you can impose conditions for having the pet. So violating this conditions might be a breach of the tenancy agreement.
So could that be things like if the dog becomes aggressive or is dangerous? Is that probably one of the ones I imagine?
Yeah, or just special terms in the lease agreement, like, for example, that if the dog begins to dig holes in the yard, the tenants need to rectify that within 7 days, or it can be done at their expense. So we do a lot of that. And then we have it that the tenants have to get general pest control and flea treatment. We also have that they have to clean the carpets every 6 months and not 12 months. Well, not just at the end of the tenancy. We get them to do them 6 monthly just because I find if you have... if you've got indoor pets, like, I think it's good to get them steam cleaned and not let anything build up.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I had my place trashed with dogs. I had a very bad experience, and people and children. There was the trifecta, and they absolutely trashed the place. And it was fleas and it was a terrible experience. It was like $1,800. I had an $1,800 bond, and then I had to pay $2,500 on top of that. Wildness. So, but that's more of a question around, like, what are some of the, actually, before we go on to new grounds for termination, what are some of the red flags that you see for those tenancies now? Because I had some red flags that I accidentally brought on to myself, because I wrote in the ad, I was like trying to optimize the ad, and I said to the property manager, because she was on one of these larger, Ray White or whatever, and I'm like, look, the ad just doesn't sound any good. You've got spelling mistakes. It's no good. Let's incentivize these people, and I'll give 2 weeks for free. So I gave 2 weeks for free, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm winning because I've done 2 weeks for free. Anyway, we get a couple of applications, and it's like, yeah, we got the person in, and it was a terrible idea. But I incentivized and attracted people that were not the people that you want to be attracting. But someone sees 2 weeks for free, they're like, oh, cool. Well, then I've got 2 weeks for free, and I don't know. What do you kind of see?
Well, probably equally as the same as going too high on the market. When you just go ridiculously high, you're like, oh, the market's crazy. Let's just go. I see one at the moment. It's on in Crestmead or somewhere, and the market value for that property is probably like 500, and it's listed for 600. I'm like, you're just gonna it gets to a certain point, because normal working people want generally a bargain or a good deal or value. So who's going to be attracted to that? People who aren't looking for value, or, people who are desperate. And then you're going to attract the desperate kind of people. So red flags. I don't know. It's a tricky. I'm big on like character and having the relationship with the tenants, and like, yeah, I've had I've seen it literally everything that you could see. So yeah, I've not had a bad one in a long time, but yeah, looking back on when I first started, there was like some tenants that I rented to, and then yeah, you could see those kind of big red flags when you look back, where they were like slow to do everything and slow to pay the bond, and it was all just a little bit, they're self-employed and they get paid in cash, and yeah.
Megan has asked a couple of questions, but I wanted to, could you specify in the lease that dogs or cats have to have plastic claw attachments not to cause damage? That seems a bit intrusive. Can you do that? Is that okay with animals?
Well, at the same time, there's a general clause in all the tenancy agreements that the tenants have right to quiet enjoyment of the property. So I would dispute that would be impeding on their quiet enjoyment of the property, because you're putting specific things like that. No, I wouldn't, because I'm just very common sense and logical with like, that's would they do that?
Dog's not gonna like, dog or cat's not gonna like that though. I don't think
you could word it a lot better, where you just say,
you wear shoes, Jeff. You wear shoes every day.
I'm a trained seal, apparently. Anyway.
And just having that entry condition report saying that this is the condition of the property, and that second part of the legislation where it's not considered to be fair wear and tear if there is damages. So yeah,
would cover that.
So what about Centrelink payments, right? Is that a scary thing? Like there was a post in the group about, hey, I saw that the people have Centrelink payments on that. Should I be worried?
Not at all. I don't think. I think it's great. You're getting paid at the spot. You're not going to lose that Centrelink. I mean, if you lose the Centrelink income, then you've increased your income, I'd say. So I don't know.
Yeah,
as long as it's still affordable,
it's a win-win.
It's okay. Like some of them are like, I've rented to quite a few like single mums before, where they might be working part-time at a school, and then they have their parenting single payment, and then they get child support. It's like, okay, you can actually afford $450 a week or whatever it is between all those things. But if you're this day and age, if you're just on job seeker and your partner's on the disability, your affordability would be like $270 a week. Like you actually do not meet the criteria for affording any houses in Logan in general anymore, because the rents are $450 when they used to be, $300 or $350.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. And where are these people going? Like, if they can't afford it, where are they kind of getting shipped to?
Braden, out to Ipswich. I do love Braden, but yeah. But even they're doing big rent increases out those ways as well. So maybe more towards like Bow Desert, out to like Glen Eagle, and then out to Ipswich, and like further out to Ipswich. So that portion between like Ipswich and Rosewood, maybe like real regional. Yeah, they have to. Or you have like dual living properties. I'm seeing a lot of households coming together, where like two sisters and the mum move in together, because then they can afford a nicer house. So we're seeing a lot more like co-living as well.
Yeah, like exactly what you were talking about before, where you have an upstairs, downstairs, or a granny flat like that. That's actually getting a lot more rent because people want to live together.
And it's good because it keeps affordable housing available.
One question that did come up, and I don't think we kind of touched too much on it. I think many would consider this unethical. It would be great for the person who wrote this. I can't see who wrote it, but
I think it's about the pets thing.
Expand on that.
The pets thing with the claws, putting the attachments on pets.
Putting little shoes on them. Little cat shoes. Is that what would be unethical?
Yeah, they replied to that comment, so it was. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So let's talk about the ethical side of things of raising rents. Like, how do you factor that in, like with your investors and with the tenants that you see?
Sorry, I just started reading the rent increase comment. What was the question again? Sorry.
just from the ethics side of things, from raising rents, because we investors get hit with the greedy investors are always trying to raise rent and putting down the little man and all of that kind of stuff. But a lot of the property investors that I actually work with are just mums and dads, and they've got one or two properties, and they're looking to get that third, or they're looking to get that first and get their foot on the ladder. But yeah, on the ethical side of things,
well, essentially, it depends on how you see investors as well, because most, like you said, mum and dad investors, which like the statistics add up that's most of them, and it's risk versus reward. These investors are saving deposits, they're refinancing, they're putting themselves in a more risky situation than just renting, and that risk needs to be rewarded. And for the last 10 years, we've not seen hardly any rent increases in general in Brisbane. So why should they not be able to capitalize on it now when we've waited so long for that to be done? So yes, it's really hard to have that conversation when, like I said before, when you've got an excellent long-term tenant, and they can't afford it anymore. And that is just like anywhere, like people, there are areas like New York and London and Sydney where people just can't afford to rent in those areas and they have to move further out. So if that's the case, you have two choices. You can earn more money or you can move further out. So yeah, it's I don't think it's ethically got anything to do with that, because it's a service that these investors are providing, and I think the government's making it more and more difficult for them to provide it, and it's such an essential part of it.
I feel like Joe's gone all current affair here. He's asked the tough question. He's like, ethical? Is it ethical? Joe, is it ethical for banks to increase the interest rate, the cash rate?
Yeah, well, banks is business.
I don't know.
Okay. We're getting off topic. Let's jump in. New grounds for termination. Oh no, what does this mean?
So it's not that different, really. Like, essentially, the periodic tenancies are going to be phased out because they're essential. I don't know if that's the next one or if I'm kind of tying them in together. So yeah, essentially with there it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we'll go back up.
This is kind of the controversial one to a certain extent. So essentially, the property owner has lost the rights to end a periodic tenancy by providing notice. So historically, if you had a periodic tenancy, which is just a month to month, as in it's expired and there's no end date, then an owner could at any time provide 60 days notice and say, hey, you need to vacate. We're going to sell the property or we're going to do whatever. Where now that is not considered, you cannot, well, that's kind of what the first slide's about, but you cannot give no grounds. But grounds to ending a tenancy is that the fixed term has ended. So that's essentially how it works. So everything will always have an end date. And if you've not got a new fixed term tenancy in place, you would issue 60 days notice so that they either renew a lease or vacate at that time. So essentially from the periodic tenancy side of things, so unless the owners can establish one of the clauses for the grounds, because you have to provide notice to leave with grounds now, they will never be able to terminate a periodic tenancy, which isn't completely true because they still have an agreement that they need to maintain their rent payments. So there's still grounds to do that. And those grounds for ending a periodic is selling. So they can place the property, putting the property up for sale. The change of use. So if you have your mum or sister or someone moving into the property or the property is being redeveloped. And 3 is if you're doing major improvements or renovations. So there's still, it's not as scary as it sounds, but you just want to make sure that you're issuing that 60 days notice and have that time.
Yeah, so if the lease ends, so you've got a 12-month lease, it then goes to the 13th month, it becomes a periodic lease, and then it just sits on that, where you used to be able to just say, oh, I'm going to put you on another 12-month lease, or I'm going to raise the rents and I'll give you 60 days notice. But what you're saying here is they've changed it and they said once you get to that 13th month, you can no longer end that tenancy. Is that?
It just becomes like a never-ending agreement pending that they still fill out
But-
their obligations. Yeah.
But I can end a 12-month lease. So it gets to the 12th month. I can then say, great, we're raising the rent. So you've got to be super on top of that, because if you lapse into that periodic lease, it's going to take a lot of your flexibility out.
Yeah, and that's why that person who made the comment earlier suggested some agencies, I think this is just ridiculous, but providing the notice to leave for the end of the tenancy when they move in. So it's like, hey, you know that lease that ends in September? It's probably an easy conversation to have. I just don't like the tone of it, which is like, hey, when this lease expires, the actual expiry date, you will either need to renew a lease or you need to vacate on that date. So you can do that as well.
You can do it 60 days before anyway. But
yeah, minimum 60 days. So you'd want to do it like 65, 70.
Yeah. Okay. And then what was this one?
It's kind of...
Yeah, so this is that's pretty much exactly what we're talking about in terms of the fixed term tenancies. So yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Oh, there's more.
Minimum housing standards. Interesting. Needs to be waterproof.
Property needs to be waterproof. Okay. Good idea. I agree with that one.
Why wouldn't you want that anyway?
It comes in September next year, actually. This is a little bit different because what the minimum housing standards, it kind of gets a little bit complicated, but what essentially can happen if the property is not minimum housing standard, as in those things happen and it's not rectified, then the tenants can provide 7 days notice because they have not maintained the property to the minimum housing standard. So they could provide, which my concern with this is maybe I've got like a little distrusting disposition or something, but say that the door lock breaks and they report it, and maybe it's reported in a text message and then gets missed, and then they can just provide 7 days notice and vacate. So which is like there's not much time. So yeah, that's kind of, it could be worked. I do agree that properties should be kept to the standard though, but it needs to be waterproofed. It's pretty easy for a roof leak to happen. And sometimes that takes longer to get it done.
So I think what I'm picking up here is you've got these things that need to be sort of maintained on the property or minimum standards. But then if you don't have this, the consequence is the tenant can say, look, I'm up and leaving in 7 days.
Yeah. And 7 days isn't necessarily enough time to find a new tenant as well. So
not really, no.
Vacancy period. So yeah, that comes in September, the minimum housing standard. So yeah, just another thing. I don't think this legislation's that scary. It's just more work for us, 100%, but more. It's not a big of a deal, but some of the things are a little bit, left leaning.
Yeah, and this is, someone said it appears very similar to the rules in Victoria, and it's very similar to what they've got down there, but Victoria's a little bit more hard-nosed. And I don't know if this is the same, but in Victoria, every appliance has to work. So, for instance, we bought a property and they had a aircon unit on the wall, like a brand new good one, and it worked perfectly fine. But they had the old box that was connected to the outside through the brick wall that didn't work. That's why they bought the new one. But we had to fully remove the entire unit out because that appliance didn't work. Which you should have just kept in. No one cared that the thing didn't work. It just was a feature. It was a wall feature. But we had to fully remove it all because the appliance itself didn't actually function and work. And it looks like that's what they're saying, like with the laundry facilities and everything. Everything needs to be up to a minimum standard of function.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough, I guess.
Yeah, guys, can I just be back in 5 minutes? Not 5 minutes, 5 seconds. I'll be back in a sec. Hold on.
Yeah, we'll get rid of it. There we go. Go on, Jeff.
So, Joe, what do we what have we got installed for the next for the next three months up until we've got 4 months at the end of the year? But what do you sort of foresee? Let's get the crystal ball out, because I've kind of I think we'll sort of see. Oh yeah, I want to ask you.
Well, I'm seeing the top end of the market. There's actually a fantastic chart someone shared. The top end of the market.
What is the top though? Top? Are we talking about top of each market? Or,
Well,
I'm famous for saying
I'm seeing the more expensive properties that
Yep.
you have a $3 million mortgage, a 1% interest rate rise is a big deal. If you have a $500,000 mortgage, it's not such a big deal. So I'm starting to see markets starting the higher end coming off peak a little bit. But the fear and uncertainty in the market is all over. Like people are not as energetic to push the envelope a little bit from there. That's kind of what I'm seeing. I don't know.
Interesting.
What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Well, Jackie's back, but just quickly, just doing my own little local sphere.
Yeah.
I'd love to keep buying right now, but in my local little sphere, I'm still seeing properties sell quite in a reasonable minute time frame, and I'm not seeing a whole bunch of properties come on the market. Like it's just so this kind of and we're not talking sort of 200-400K properties. We're talking $800,000 to $900,000 minimum up to sort of anything like 1.5 million, but even sort of more than that. So it's interesting. But
the days on market aren't creeping up as much as
maybe a touch, maybe a little bit, but
But I'm starting to see places go on the opens, like they're running 2 opens now. Before they would run no opens and we'd secure a deal before.
And stop. There's this property just on the road around the corner of me. Like it's they started at like 980,000. And as a 2-bedder, it's development potential. But I'm like, they can't build X amount. And it's been on the market for now probably 40, 50, 60 days, dropped by the selling price. This price dropped by about 130, 140. And it's just because there's it's not cheap enough for first home buyers. And developers saying, well, I can't make the numbers work. So,
that's a fantastic point. And it's probably not a great property. So I'm still seeing good properties go quickly, but crap properties that used to go straight away are now, I don't need to settle for this property. I can move on to the next one. What are you seeing, Jackie, out there in the market? Because I know you're quite active on the buy side of things as well as the rental side of things. Like what is it looking like up there nowadays?
A little bit, way more stock on the market. So like historically in the last couple of months, there just wasn't much stock and not much to choose from, where, definitely we're seeing more stock on the market, but I'm still seeing prices are still really good. So it's like there might be more stock on the market and might sit just that slightly more, maybe a couple, 2-3 weeks more. But the prices that I'm seeing settle are still pretty solid.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. I think we should get into some of the questions because we've had a whole bunch of questions pumping through.
This is a really interesting one that I picked up. I think I'm very interested to hear this. So my property manager suggests not to increase rent because the tenant has already paid 20% above the median rent for that area. The property is above average condition and the lease is due to expire soon. Does it sound alarming? I mean, I don't know. Is there enough information there? Though?
Is median rent the best comparable? Like,
no, it's not relative. It's not relative to. It's probably a nice statistic, but it's not relative to what market, like what you could achieve for that property. So the best comparable is like sales. What is on the market and what are things renting for? So that's the only. I've never even heard of that. That's really ridiculous. That is alarming.
Well, it's interesting at least. You might there might be a logical, but maybe
Jackie, one thing I thought would be worth doing because I work with Jackie a little bit. If you want a good property manager, use her. But one thing that we've been on the phone many times, and I ask you a question like, "Oh, what would this rent for?" And I hear you go on the computer for realestate.com. And then you're like, okay, cool. So I was wondering, can you teach me how you do it? So we have Crestmead here. What filters do you use? And what search function do you go to find out what property that is? Or actually, even better, whoever put this comment in, tell us the area for your property.
I was going to
Let's-
say that. Tell us your suburb.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
What suburb is this? And we can do what Jackie does, because it always blows. I'm like, Jackie, what's this one worth? And you're like, oh, actually, let me just check what's on the market right now. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, wow, cool. I should have done that. I'm very lazy. Sorry.
It's good to it's good. It's constantly changing up here though, so I don't want to say it's going to rent for
Camilo,
600.
Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay, well, it's not in. It's nowhere near. It's about as far as away from Crestmead. Now, what do we do here? Include surrounding suburbs or not? No.
No, well, I do in Logan at the moment, but you've just first searched the suburb
With
Oh,
a
straight
shoe.
up, just-
by
House.
itself. It's only that you only include it if there's only like 5 or 6 properties for rent.
Okay.
Um,
Yep. That
and
makes
then
sense.
just do the bedrooms. That's pretty
How many
much it.
beds?
I don't even use
Tell us what you got.
or
Camilo?
just do that in just search that because there's not a
Yep.
whole heap of stock. 5 results.
There's only 5. Wow. Okay. Interesting. So
Okay.
Don't put any more filters.
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
More filters for you.
But look at
3
that.
bed.
Look at that. Look at that.
it's quite
no,
a
that
big
was a 2-1.
disparity.
Sorry. I was going to say that was a 2-1, but look at
Cool.
okay, that's pretty similar.
420.
Yeah.
Okay. What? Yeah. 3 bed with a swimming pool. Okay. Okay. So the only,
Nice.
I mean, these are all 3 beds. And what are they saying? What's the rent? Tell us what the situation is. How much rent is it?
Maybe we're getting too specific here, Joe. I mean,
Well,
no, it's
not
not
at
on.
all. We're helping people here. We're saving lives.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Somebody
so
might-
they're saying so for 3-1 with a swimming pool. Swimming pools generally add like $30 to $50 a week if it's in nice condition.
So I think
That's-
it's kind of hard to say that there's like it looks like it's got to be somewhere between 400 and maybe 450 or I mean I don't know 460.
That's 400. That's a bit. I mean, there's
You
no
should
point in
bring
that one. That one looks like if it rains, you'll have a swimming pool. Like they've created their own little DIY swimming pool. 380, but we received 450. Median rent is 350, but we received 450. Okay. So it sounds like you're. Sorry, how much did you say a pool adds?
I said $30 to $50 a week, so it's probably about right.
Yeah. So 380 doesn't seem realistic. Like 380 doesn't seem like a good option there. And this is all you do. So this is all you do. You just jump on and then say that one's a 3 bed, that one's a 3 bed. Surrounding areas. Oh,
Yep.
not much.
Yeah. There's just not a lot of stock on, so it's pretty easy to just compare them
It's
quickly.
down near close to
Okay.
yeah,
Just
close
just
to where
jump
you
on
were,
here.
Joe.
410, 420, 450. But it's coming soon.
450 for a 3-1's probably not bad, depending on the condition.
The 4,
Yeah, you got a
4-2.
4 better.
3 bed, 1 bath. Just further down the road, looks like a really nice
It's
reno.
quite nice as well. Yeah, that
Very
looks
nice.
really. Yeah, that looks smicky. Oh, it looks like.
Oh, main road.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
But it's nice though, Joe. I mean, it's not. WA doesn't get that busy anyway. It's 1AB. Okay, let's
They
go
don't
to
have
another
roads
question.
down there, do they?
Did you say that don't have roads? What do you?
They don't have roads.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Fantastic.
So I think there's throw your questions at people because we'll jump on these questions, and I know I feel. Let's see. This is it's an interesting. Are the rent increases actually forcing people out of the area and change the demographic, or are they just finding the extra money somehow? Like, what's your experience of that, Jackie?
It's a great
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I do think that some people are moving out of the area. And that's what I talk about a lot with my clients or clients that are coming on about, the lower demographic areas. Because what was appealing to like Kingston, Woodridge, those kind of areas is that they were really cheap and you could be on the dole, both of you, and still afford to pay rent and, do what you need to do. But now you can't afford to be unemployed and pay $450 a week. So you got 2 options. You either increase your income or move out of the area. So we are seeing, quite a few people move to more affordable areas for them, especially that low demographic. They're just moving further out.
Yeah.
But some people will find the money as well. That's kind of the...
It's inconvenient to move.
Yeah, but just finding the money is not always that easy. Like, Can't just find money.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting one as well, because we just encountered there where somebody said Jackie's thoughts on rental CMAs with stock levels being so low. How do you, if you've only got that sort of, probably have to expand it out to surrounding suburbs, or what's the trick?
Surrounded. See, that's the thing. That's why I always check realestate.com, and then I'll also do CoreLogic after. But CoreLogic's data is from 6 months ago, so the rents have changed a lot in that period. So they're not that relative. So that's where just on the market's the best one for doing that. But realistically, you need a minimum of like 3 to 4 comparables, I think, as enough supporting evidence if it was to get escalated.
Yeah. And I think we've probably got time for 2 more, because I know poor Jackie's has had a big day. Went and played some netball. This is I'm really interested in your thoughts on advertising a property just renovated and how you would market it, or how you take it to market. Do you go high and see what happens? What should we look for as an indication of a great tenant? I think that's 4 questions in one. But renovated properties. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you should see. I always think, when you're comparing price, for example, like $450 for a property, if I was looking for a property with a budget of $450 and I saw a property that's renovated and has that owner occupier appeal, I could probably push my budget to $485 or $490, because it's like, it's just an extra $20 a week or whatever. So that's where I tend to just go, say the market value is $650. It's like, let's just try for $685 or $695, and then people monitor and save properties all the time online. So what they'll do then is, if you're not getting decent applications or enough inquiry, you drop it, and then people would see that as a discount. So they'd say, we're going to save this much. It's like, actually, it's like just the supermarkets retail, there's a 50% off sale, and they just mark everything up 50%.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I often see that. It's pretty sneaky. Like, you see a sale, it's like, but actually it's the same price if you pay attention. Yeah.
So always go ambitious, especially if the vacancy rate's like 1% or under. I just try. And I've had clients come to me, I'll appraise it at 485. They're like, let's just go 500. I'm like, okay, let's just try 500, and then we'll get it. We're like, there you go. So I don't know what and how to decipher a good application was the question.
Yeah. What are the top 3 things you look for in a good tenant, or what are just some quick tips and tactics on that one?
Okay, so definitely employed, and I like to see 2 employment at least, like multiple income streams. So if this person loses their job, they can still maintain it, and just like awesome rental references through real estates.
Hey, Vijay, you've missed a lot, mate. You've missed a lot.
All right, watch it on YouTube. We'll be up there. There'll be plenty of gold.
I love that. Sorry, tickled me.
What else would you do? Yeah, just making sure a rental reference through a real estate is the best, and through like having an actual proper tenant ledger rather than these private ones. It's like, they were good. It's like, well, how do we even know they ever paid you anything? So yeah. Yeah,
that's some great I've got a question about, how do you feel about people who haven't rented before? Is that a bit of a not a red flag? How do you vet those kind
of? I don't mind it. I find I've rented to quite a few tenants that haven't rented before or living at home. Probably not your first pick, though, to be honest. If you're comparing a couple that's been in one house for 9 years and has immaculate rental history, and a couple that's living with mum and dad, they're way more appealing. But we've done them in the past, and they've always generally worked out really well, especially if it's like a couple moving out and they both work full time. They're really grateful. A couple I've rented to before, they're like just super grateful for the opportunity.
One question here
as well.
Sorry, what was that?
It all comes down to their character. So that's
the vibe.
Yeah.
Are rents in areas outside of Southeast Queensland moving up? One of our regional Victoria's area has dropped post-lockdown fear. Ooh, there we go. One thing I was reading an article. I don't know if you can't really. I mean, you focus on Logan, Jackie. But there's this great little article that I found that talks about rents. I believe this is for Australia. But look at the increase, though. We had this massive increase in 2008 and 2010. It dipped off a little bit. But 2022 advertised rents have gone up drastically over the past 6 months, along with the stock levels of property. So again, Jackie's saying we just looked at a property in WA. There's 5 properties listed for sale. We look at Crestmead, there's 6 properties listed for sale. This is just basic supply and demand. If there isn't a supply of properties, and there's a heap of demand for people that want to live there, it's going to go up. And especially in these regional towns, you do see a lot of people move there. And if 100 people move there and take up 100 rental properties, that means there are 100 people looking for a rental. So when people owner occupies, exactly like what's happening is happening all over in different pockets, but it's literally just supply and demand. So all over. So I just thought I'd share that link, and I will share it in the group chat as well.
Yeah. We've never seen rents rise so much so quickly, and I think there are a lot of good agents out there going pretty ambitious with it, and then they'll get them. And yeah, that's kind of what's driving it up as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you say, oh, look, this rent got 500. Oh, look, this rent got 500. And then everyone gets 5, and then you can point to this one and say, well, it's going for that. But it does get to a point where someone will list their property and say, well, I'm willing to take 450. I'm willing to take 430. And then it keeps dropping as well. Here we go. Well, throw in. Well, we've got time for one last question. If there's any special questions on here, throw them in.
Well, I mean, somebody asked what areas to renovate to get the best bang for your buck. I mean, that's a very broad question. Oh, you want to answer?
What about in Logan, Jackie?
Yeah, I love just like your cosmetic reno. So just carpet or floors. Painting just does so much. I love a kitchen resurface as well, where they paint all the cupboards and do the door handles and stuff. We do heaps of cosmetic renos and blinds, just replacing all the blinds. You can do it all for 10, 15K max. Do all those 4 things and you'll probably get in Logan an extra $80 on top of what you would have gotten anyway. And it just attracts a better quality tenant as well. The better quality tenants want to live somewhere nicer.
Yeah, so you do that. You spend how much? 10 grand, and you increase the rent by $80. Yeah, so that's like 13. You say $80?
Yeah, at least it's on top of what you would have say the market value was 450, and then you do a little cosmetic, or maybe 50 to 80. That's probably depends on if it's a 3-1 or a 4-2.
Yeah, that's $12,000-$13,000, and then that pays for itself over 3 years. That's $12,000-$13,000, so it pays for itself in 13 years, and it's all stacked up and done.
Yeah.
This is one last quick question. What online portal do you use? Do you use Property Me? Because I used to have that one, but is that?
I use Console Cloud, which I really like. So it's all everything's in workflows, so I can see exactly where the arrears is at and the lease renewals, and I click on the maintenance tab and I can see it's all very aesthetically. You can keep track of everything really nicely, and I'm also really competitive. So if it's not good, it's red. So I'm green, get it green. And then the owner has access to the information through there as well.
Yeah, it's good to have some sort of portal that you can see as an investor. I have my properties are with Property Me, and I don't really like I think the platform's a piece of crap, to be honest. But it's good to have something there so that you can visually see, and you don't really need to know too much. Really, it's a conversation and an email with your property manager. I think that's the most important stuff that you can do. Actually, is that what you see good investors doing, jumping on the phone and having a chat with you?
Most of my clients, I don't know. I've got different clients I got certain clients that they'll just call me they'll call me about their property in Bundaberg or Perth or whatever, and then we'll chat. I'm a big chatter. We'll just chat. Like, I talk to you, Joe, on the phone. I've talked to you for 45 minutes if I can get you on the phone. So we'll just talk about all kinds of stuff. But then it might go like 6 or 7 months, and we don't speak, and then we speak, and then we catch up, and depends. But then some clients are more passive, and they just want to email and to know it's getting done. So yeah.
And what are some of your bad investors doing? Like not bad investors, but what are some of
the suboptimal? Like what could they be doing better?
Yeah.
Definitely,
I'm definitely suboptimal.
I think the worst kind of investor or client, if you're going to put it, is just they're just constantly worrying about something. They're just worried about something. They're very anxious people, and I don't know if it's a great strategy, especially if you want to scale your portfolio, being constantly worried about this and what if this, and also owners that like want to get 3 or 4 quotes for maintenance or want to inspect maintenance as well. I've got or I've heard of people that want to go out, there's like no hot water, for example, and they want to go and inspect it. It's like, it's not how it works.
What to confirm there's no hot water.
Are you an electrician or plumber? Like, is that, yeah.
So just those like extra hands-on, because I think it would compound and make the investing experience less positive as well.
Yeah, just a nightmare. Joe, I think we've got to let poor Jackie go, Joe, man. She's really she's got a cold, and so I think we've just to finish off there. Whilst we're sort of, I really appreciate you going through putting that PowerPoint together. You've done an amazing job, and I'm sure the audience, the questions have have been flowing. So, but what's a really great way people give us one sort of parting tip and tell us how people can reach out to you. Like, what's the best way? Here you go. You already got it. I was about to drop the link.
Yeah, cute.
Yeah,
that's my little team. Very awesome bunch of people. So they can reach out if you just go to myloganrealty.com, contact us, and my mobile's there. So I think best way, I'm a talker. So if you just give me a call and talk us through your property or situation, like even if you don't sign with us, I'll give you advice on what you could do. So yeah, you can give us a call. And what's a parting advice? I think it's definitely like it's unprecedented that we've seen rents rise like this. And I don't think this is probably like it's at least once in a 15-year opportunity. So I think, you got to kind of treat it like business. And if you're investing, then I think it's a good opportunity now to raise your rents and give yourself a pay rise.
Yeah, because it's not guaranteed to happen for the next 10 years going forward. It's unprecedented, as you said. Jackie Skein, it is always amazing to have a conversation with you. You share so many valuable insights. I appreciate you running through all of this with us. It's been awesome. Now we know how to raise our rents and do it successfully. We will share the top 10 tips for raising rent, optimizing and doing your rent thing, whatever Jeff called it, and we will make it happen.
Yes.
Anything you want to say, Jeff?
No, just I suppose pay attention to some of the small things, but not too close attention, and pay, I suppose, ultimate attention to where you actually want to go. I know I get ribbed for talking about goals too much, but I don't know, I just love kicking goals. So let's go and kick some goals. Yeah, interested and talk to you soon, Jackie. BJ, he's been on for 5 minutes and he's already seen so much value. He's loving it. So yeah, that's what I got to say. Just keep adding value to the world.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Let's go buy a property. I'll see you later.
Everybody, thank you.
See ya.